I don't really know what goes on that causes a large number of players to act this way, and this is coming from someone who doesn't particularly over or underhype a character unless it's glaringly obvious, but the Hoyo community has a habit of doom posting the strength and viability of new characters, notably on Reddit. It's been a thing for like ages, so much so that memes get posted across Twitter that go along the lines of "here we go again," and to shows characters that turned out to be really strong, but at the time people thought they were mid. Fair is fair, it's easy for players to be influenced by what they hear online even a little bit. I myself am guilty of making passing remarks on certain units that get interpreted literally without my intending them to be taken as such. For example, in my I think too many 5 stars video, I made an offhand remark on how considering the quote-unquote unsuccessful characters we've gotten so far throughout version 2 were Jade and Boothill, that's a good thing in terms of consistency. Looking back, I can see how that might have been taken as me saying Jade and Boothill were bad, which is actually the point of this video. At the suggestion of my good buddy LP, I want to make a video talking about characters that have been misunderstood to be weak, when in reality they're significantly better than public opinion gives them credit for. I suppose having brought up Boothill, we can talk about him first. Not the most popular character out there on account of him showing out of nowhere at the time he was trip marketed. Even during his involvement in the Penacony storyline, he wasn't a major centerpiece either, so overall interest in him wasn't exactly too high, which might be the reason people thought he wasn't good. To his credit, no one ever said he was a garbage unit, but the general consensus was that he wasn't on the same meta-shattering level as Akron and Firefly were perceived. It also didn't help that he came out just before Firefly, leading many to disregard pulling for him on account of them wanting to save up for Best Girl. This was also around the time where sentiments towards single-target DPS were at an all-time low. At the time, Boothill was erroneously perceived as the main actor of the newly emerging Super Break engine, despite not actually having anything related to Super Break at all. He's more of a hyper carry who attacks with break damage than an actual Super Break-oriented character. Granted, he can do that, but it's more of a half and half. In any case, obviously when a new strategy is discovered or implemented, it might take a while for people to realize how good it can be. Much like how the follow-up engine didn't really get anywhere until the IPC team came about. Harmony MC was present, mind you, but Super Break was still a newfound gimmick at the time, and when factoring in what I said earlier about people not really wanting to try him out since they were saving for Firefly, hardly anyone pulled for him. It's common for people to think a character is worse than they actually are if they're unpopular, since logically if a character is good, everyone would use him. Being an exclusively single-target character also made him quite polarizing. Between versions 2.1 to 2.4, most players are focused on getting characters who could excel in all 3 game modes, explaining why Archon and Firefly are viewed in such esteem even to this day. By contrast, Boothill's non-existence in pure fiction and the fact that he had no semblance of wave clear were quite detrimental to people's impression of him. However, upon taking a closer look at him, there's a lot of stuff that lends credence to his power. Boothill is the second best DPS character in the game if we're actually measuring it by literal DPS. Akron and Firefly are top tier for their flexibility and coverage, but their actual DPS ceilings aren't necessarily the best. Boothill's the opposite, where he's got one job, but he does that job better than anyone else can. Prior to Face Shaw, he had easily the best DPS against a single target period, making him excellent at speedrunning bosses when played correctly. Here's a noteworthy example. Everyone hates the Aventurine boss fight for having a really tedious mechanic. Boothill is the only character at E0 who can burst him before he enters his dice phase. Pridewind might be more suited for the average player who isn't overly concerned with min-maxing, but if you go down to Boothill's MLC teams, you got your usual 6 cycle, 7 cycle, maybe an 8 cycle here and there, but then randomly you see teams with an average of 2 cycles. You may have also noticed that those parties forego a sustain and just bring full DPS. He really is the definition of they can't hurt me if they're dead. Even though he doesn't really get going until you get triple pocket trick shots, once he does get them, he keeps them for the rest of the fight, letting you effectively one-tap everything. And believe it or not, it's actually really easy to get those stacks too. Breaking an enemy or killing them gives him a trick shot, and considering he's all about break damage, breaking a target enemy likely will kill them in the process. So you get 2 stacks with only 1 action. Boothill effectively has to kill just one thing before he can turn attention to the big bad and whoop their ass. Each attack on a broken enemy at full stacks can do damage in the millions with the right equipment. He is the boss-killing speedrunner. I think the main thing skewing his perceived value is that he's highly dependent on what he's up against. If you were to come across someone who can lock their toughness gauges, then congrats, you have a worthless unit, and of course he's completely irrelevant in pure fiction. Full admission, I also didn't think of him too highly since I myself prioritize coverage over efficiency for characters, but if there's anyone in Honkai Star that people need to give a second look at, it would be him. While most DPS units have a pressure range of 80 to like 120%, Boothill is more like 0 to 150. He reminds me of ADC mains in League. They're either useless or they 1v9 games. My assessment of him before was that he was a decent character, but in all actuality, he deserves to have the same market value as Firefly. Circumstances and lack of character appeal make him look worse than he actually is. In a similar fashion, Yun Li is one of the characters who had a fairly mellow reception. Coming off the tail end of Penacony, which is the main storyline of version 2, people don't really care too much about units who come after the fact because a lot of them are considered filler, unless of course it's someone highly anticipated like where the hell are Screwlum and Sunday Hoyo SMH my head. Basically, just like Boothill, Yunli was a character who came out of nowhere without much build-up or previous exposure. That and being a physical destruction unit centered around counterattacks is a niche we've seen before in the form of Clara. Another integral component for character appeal is if they fulfill a role the roster is in desperate need of. For example, people love Aventurine because apart from being the only person who makes the word friend sound evil and creepy, we were in desperate need of more shielders in the game. Yunli, on the other hand, doesn't check off any box in terms of necessity. Having a roundabout way to deal damage can be interpreted negatively as well. Counterattacks are inherently unreliable in the sense that you can't access them at will. Enemies have to attack Yunli for her to strike back. That leaves you open to a lot of potential risks, such as what happens if enemies deal more damage than she can reliably tank, or what if their attacks come with crowd control, in which case Yunli won't be able to fight back. Worse yet, what would happen if the enemy team just doesn't attack them much? Those are all what-if scenarios that regular attackers don't have to worry about. They would much rather prefer if the enemy never took their turn at all. Those concerns are justified, but that doesn't always result in an inferior character. There can be significant advantages to playing around this playstyle, which Yunli demonstrates in full force. I got a bit of flack in my top 10 best characters video for including Yunli because people thought it was new character bias or something, but at the time of recording, Yunli sits in the apex tier of all 3 game modes, not tier 0 mind you, but 0.5 is still top tier. You could attribute that to each game mode cycle currently favoring her, but I'll remind you that Yunli is a follow-up attacker. Counters are registered as follow-ups, meaning anything that was to benefit the follow-up engine also benefits her, giving her no shortage of infrastructure to maximize her damage. All of Yunli's counters are blast attacks, giving her naturally good wave clear since every one attack against her results in 3 strikes back. Bosses are starting to reach a point where they take multiple attacks. No doubt we've all been made aware of the insane speed creep of bosses like Hule. Hoyo will likely continue to power creep enemy attack frequency to match the power creep of our attack frequency, consequently giving Yunli even more power over the long run. Another advantage counterattackers have is that getting hit regenerates energy in Starl. It's not unusual for Yunli to have almost infinite uptime on her ultimate if she takes enough hits. Back in version 1, people used to say that Clara had potentially the highest DPS ceiling in the game in the right circumstances. Yunli is Clara who can engineer those circumstances more consistently, making that theoretical insane DPS ceiling achievable in practical settings. One major thing that really helps her consistency is that even if she doesn't get hit, her A2 trace enables her to still force out the empowered counterattack anyway. Ideally you want to get into it / call 24/7, but she does have a built-in failsafe to mitigate your DPS loss just in case. In totality, this kit does damage, lots and lots of damage. Best of all is that she can play with either hyper carry or follow-up supports. I've seen Yunli parties where she goes Tingyun and Sparkle, and I've also seen parties where she goes Topaz and Robin. People greatly underestimated Yunli when she came out. I have a feeling she could slowly creep into tier 0 in the near future. If there was a way we can attack her with our own units, like instead of Ho-Ho attacking an enemy she can attack Yunli instead, or having Topaz intentionally sack Numbi on Yunli, then that would be the funniest meme comp in the entire game. Third character is going to be Doto. Like the previous two, Prevailing Wisdom gave Doto a fairly mild rating, calling him a 5-star version of Pela, and I mean, they're not wrong. He's an upgrade to Pela, but like a 5-star version of a really good 4-star is a big deal. 5-star characters have a bigger power budget than 4-stars, and likely also have more capabilities too. Considering one of the best units in the game to this day is Akron, anything resembling a sizable upgrade to her best-in-slot party is alone a good incentive. Furthermore, Doto is a measurable upgrade over Pela for Akron. He can apply debuffs more frequently than Pela can, which is good for stacking up Akron's ultimate. And he has bonus ultimate damage and vulnerability. The form in which Doto's debuff takes is also worth making a distinction over. Increased damage taken affects the same things that defense reduction does, but calculation-wise, damage taken is consistent overall, while defense only gets big when it's in high quantities. More importantly, he can cover more bases than he lets on. First, bonus ultimate damage doesn't just help Akron, it can help anyone who depends on ultimates for damage. Argenti, for instance, or Yunli. Yunli's counters are considered ultimate damage. Doto has a lot more presence than simply being a step up over Pela. Second, with his playstyle revolving around continuous debuff application, he's best in slot for Dr. Ratio, whose DPS hinges on getting as many debuff sources on a target as possible. It's not a rogue strategy either, it's a highly competitive one. And of course, Ashen Rose constituting damage over time means he has room in dot teams. I know in my recent video on Dot, I mentioned how Doto has a hard time finding a spot in Cactus Swan teams because he has to fight with Ranmei and Robin, but in that video, I also did say that if we had a more appropriate sustain unit for Dot teams, then a case could be made for Doto working with the two. One last thing is, if you're in a pinch, technically he can also be a niche support for break teams. His damage amplification is one of the few buffs that increase break damage, plus if you get his weapon, that's an extra 24%, a notable increase. The only roadblock in that department is you really don't want to replace either Harmony MC or Ranmei, so you can try your luck in a sustainless super break team by replacing Gallagher, assuming you don't have Ling Xiao that is. One final thing to mention is that being an AoE debuffer, Doto is in prime position to capitalize on a double carry meta if it were to ever come into full force. Bottom line is that Doto, like Yunli, has extreme potential to get better in the future. He's not just a 5-star Pela, he's a lot more than that. A borderline top tier character, if not already top tier, who will most certainly be the further in we go. I think he has the potential to be just as invaluable as the Harmony Trio given time. Alright, last one I want to talk about is the newly minted Linksha. Even though she just came out, they're giving her the same treatment they gave units like Doto and Black Swan. You guys remember when Doom posters were saying Black Swan was only like 5% better than Sampo, or Huohuo was a side grade to Locha? Same thing here. Several people on Twitter, Reddit, and such have the same argument that Linksha is only 5% better than Gallagher. I can somewhat understand where this idea comes from. The conspiracy theory behind it is that people intentionally downplay a character in the hopes that with sufficient Doom posting, Hoyo might buff them, which, you know what, I can get behind that. Let's all Doom post the real Tingyun if she's ever confirmed to be alive, please. Thanks. But in all seriousness, from a cost effectiveness point of view, I get it. Even if it was a 50% increase in value from what currently exists, you're better off conserving your jades for someone who can give you a 100% increase in value, such as if you're missing, say, a Venturine for the follow-up engine. There's really no one who can do the same thing he can for that specific role. Whereas yes, Linksha is the break sustain which overlaps with Gallagher, and the difference is not so overwhelming that you're shooting yourself in the foot if you use Gallagher over Linksha. But that doesn't change the fact that Linksha's a f***ing busted character in a busted engine. She has passive healing thanks to it being tied to a summon who can act autonomously, which comes with an AoE cleanse by the way. In regards to healing, Gallagher's actually not the best at it, you mostly take him for damage. Linksha has the damage, along with sustain on par with the likes of Huohuo and Lota. Thanks to one of her passive traces, her summon will activate instantaneously at any point a party member's HP drops below 60%, giving her a Lota type insurance policy except it applies to the entire team, not just one person. Thankfully, even if she herself is crowd controlled, Fuyuan can act autonomously. AoE heal and cleanse along with break damage, not to mention being a summoner, which has been getting more attention as of late. Once more, if I don't sound like a broken record at this point, Linksha's another one of those units who start out in a good spot and additionally have lots of room to get even better in the future. It reminds me of Topaz. When she came out, people were quick to label her as a meh character, but as the follow-up engine expanded over time, she got better and better and better and better to the point where she's top tier in like every game mode. Yes, even pure fiction. I think at her lowest point, Topaz was like tier 2.5 or something. Linksha and by extension Yunli and Doto are very much the same way. They're good enough as they are right now, but their real strength is yet to be seen. The overall message behind this video is that I think a number of players have this misconception that a character needs to be amazing right from the get-go, like your Acrons, your facials, and whatnot. Would it be nice? Absolutely, but sometimes it takes a while for the right amount of infrastructure to be put in place. Kafka didn't become good until Black Swan came out several months later. Topaz and Ratio needed to wait until Venturine and Robin before they could really start beating people down. Now, are these characters muscles? No, but I stand by the belief that they're a lot better than people give them credit for. Boohill was always insanely good, people just never gave him a chance, myself included. Meanwhile, Yunli, Doto, and Linksha are good as they are now and have a lot of potential to get better. So let's see what the rest of version 2 will offer. Anyway, what are your thoughts on these four? Do you agree or disagree with my points? If it's the latter, I welcome you to share your reasoning in the comments. For now though, if you enjoyed the video, a like and subscribe would be much appreciated. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other Honkai style discussions if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.